All right. Hi, everyone who's just joined us. So welcome. We're just going to give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started. So Meredith, I'm really excited about this topic.
Thanks.
Let's see.
Okay, welcome everyone who's joined us already. Thank you for joining. I'm Tova from Rezgo, and we also have Jess on with us. She's our Director of Customer Success here at Rezgo. We'll just wait a little bit for a few others to join. I'll go over some housekeeping items, and then I'll introduce you to our host, Meredith. Okay, so today all attendees are muted. So if you have a question, please use the chat box, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end of the presentation. Today's session will be recorded, as you probably heard, and you'll be receiving a copy in your inbox, so keep an eye out for that. Now, I'm very excited to introduce our guest speaker, Meredith Rangel, founder of Bookable Tourism. Meredith has nearly 20 years of experience in the tourism industry and brings a great deal of knowledge surrounding technology, marketing, and distribution geared towards tourism business. If you aren't familiar with her company, Bookable Tourism, I highly recommend you check out her website, bookabletourism.com.au. I'll also add it in the chat here so you can take a look. Today, we're going to be discussing the importance of having a strong sales mix in place for your business and what steps you should take to achieve this. So without further ado, I will pass it over to you, Meredith.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to the Rezgo team for having me. So before we launch into it, I will do a little bit about me, which I had a lovely introduction just then as well. But yeah, so I've been working in tourism around 20 years now, and I've worked across mainly in tourism marketing, distribution and sales, and also in the booking systems and res tech space. So I created Bookable Tourism to basically empower tourism businesses to find the right booking system for them, to be confident in navigating travel technology, and also in building their own marketing strategy and also sales and distribution strategies. So business can get their most optimized revenue opportunities, and also to focus your energy into making your great experiences. Now, today we're going to talk about distribution. Distribution is quite close to my heart. I worked very heavily in distribution for a very large portion of my career, and as an inbound sales manager and sales manager for across hotels, attractions, and some tours companies. And I even stepped for about just short of 3 years into distribution and worked in a wholesaler because I felt it was really important to see what it was like on the other side as well. So this subject is very close to my heart, and I believe that using distribution and understanding how to use distribution can be a really, really big asset to your business. So the agenda today is we're going to go across why you need a diverse sales mix, how to discover new markets, what kinds and types of distribution there is out there, how to set your rates, how to do contracting, and then after the contracting, some account management. So first things first, why do you need a diverse sales mix? Well, the biggest one answer for me is that you need that because it actually reduces risk for your business. When you have different revenue streams coming in from a variety of markets, it means that if one market, say, bottoms out, you're not going to essentially close up shop because you've got a lot of other revenue streams coming in. Also, it allows you to increase revenue opportunities, and so it allows you to reach your revenue potential. We don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. I have seen this plenty of times, and with the pandemic recently, unfortunately for many businesses who did have all their eggs in the one basket, did not survive the pandemic, or they had to quickly pivot and build new product and explore other markets very, very quickly. And lastly, when you have a great diverse sales mix, it allows you to not be held by ransom by any one distribution partner. Now, an example of this, I worked with a small touring company quite a few years ago, and they had predominantly two major distribution partners. I'm talking about 45% for one distribution partner, 45% of his business for the other distribution partner, and 10% was his own direct bookings. Now, he soon acknowledged that these partners, they knew how important they were to his business, and they started actually setting their own kind of terms and rates that he couldn't say no to, because it was an ill power balance, essentially. So when I went in and consulted with him, we appointed a digital agency to help him support drive direct bookings. But then we also looked at other trade partners and gave them really great competitive rates to start moving that market share. Now, that was about 5-6 years ago, and he now has a great diverse sales mix. So he's not in that position anymore. So this is also another reason why you need to be constantly looking at your different sales mix and revenue streams to ensure that it's kind of fairly evenly spread as you can across the pie. Now, what does a diverse sales mix look like? Now, this is actually a real life example. This is from a month-end report from a small attraction. Now, this attraction, they have it split in their domestic business and their inbound business. Now, their domestic business at that point was all direct. Their inbound business, you can see they broke up via different markets of the world, but within those different markets, they had 130 trade partners. And I know that sounds a lot. They have refined it down since, but they had 130 trade partners that they worked with to manage that. Now, this is just 1 month, and you can see that the split here, their direct business was 1,380 passengers, and then they had 11,446 inbound passengers for that month. By the end of the year, they were looking at a 50-50 split between inbound and domestic. So they had 50% direct business and 50% inbound business. So in this allowed multiple options for this business when certain events happened. So an example of one event that happened was they got a lot of cruise business come and visit their attractions. And one year, the cruise business just disappeared. And it was picked up immediately that cruise business wasn't coming in the traditional cruise season. And so then they were able to contact the relevant trade partners that they previously worked with the cruise business and ask the question, why aren't we've contracted with you, but we're not getting any business, what's going on? And so then when we delved into it, there was actually a change in the port authority in Sydney Harbour where the cruise businesses came into, and the ships weren't allowed to stay for more than 1 day, whereas previously they used to stay 2 to 3 days, and they weren't actually having the opportunity to travel out to this attraction. So that answered that. It meant also that it gave that business the opportunity with other businesses that also used to get that cruise business to come together and almost advocate to the port authorities and the relevant government tourism entities on why there needed to be some alternative for that lost business as well. But what we were able to do was go back, reforecast our numbers and say, okay, that cruise business isn't going to come in this year, and be prepared for that drop of business. But because it wasn't such a huge piece of business, it was okay. The business was still okay. A second example was their Korean business dropped suddenly. Again, it was pick up the phone and go and talk to some of the Korean partners. And they soon quickly advised that there had been a travel accident, a cruise ship accident in Korea, and people were cancelling their trips because they suddenly had a lot of uncertainty around travel. What our partners were able to say at that point was they were saying it usually takes around 6 months for that confidence to come back. So again, we were able to readjust our numbers and reforecast our figures and just be prepared and ready for when that business did come back in its full capacity. And the third thing is when, of course, the pandemic hit. So this particular business, yes, they did take quite a big hit because they are here in Australia and all of our borders closed. So that meant they lost all of their inbound business. But because they had strong domestic business, and then they turned more of their marketing efforts into that domestic business, and then they started contracting more of the OTAs, the online travel agents, It allowed them to further grow their domestic business and also survive through the pandemic relatively unscathed. Now, when I also first looked at this business as well, there was one trade partner that did have too large a volume coming through. So what we did was we incentivized some of their smaller day tour operators and gave them a conditional increase in their net rate. So what that meant was those particular operators, they got a better net rate, but they were able to, they had to hit certain targets in order to keep that net rate. And we were able to actually shift passenger numbers across to smaller operators and again, move the kind of the hold that one big tour operator actually had. So you can see how you can actually manipulate how you want the different channels and the people to find you and your different travelers. Now, just a side note, if you are looking at the yields, which in case this has been up for a little while, you can see there's quite a difference between the yield for the direct booking versus the inbound booking. Now, it is quite a bit lower because they are going through trade, and so you're paying relevant net rates. However, it's to note here, they hadn't taken out the marketing costs completely here. And also their inbound rates, which is one of the reasons why I came in, hadn't been set correctly. And so it was part of my job to come in and actually reset their inbound rates and get them to be more on par with best practice of setting net rates. Now, where do distribution sit in the consumer experience, the consumer journey? So you can see here, this is the consumer journey map, and trade and distribution sit in that dream stage, the awareness stage when they're just thinking about their holidays, the planning stage, and the booking stage. They don't usually operate in the experience because that's when your product steps in. Some of them do, of course, post-travel questionnaires and so on to ask, ratings and so on as well. Some of them do play in that space a little bit, but the majority of them are in that dream, planning, and booking stage, which is quite a significant part of the consumer journey. So, how do we build a diverse sales mix? Let's look for new markets. So the first things you need to think about is, who is your target customer? Who are they? You've probably already got a good idea with your current customer base that you have. Is there another audience or another target customer, maybe in another geographical location, that you could possibly target? So that's the first thing to think about. Who is your target customer, and are they located elsewhere around the world? Is there any product development required? Certain markets that you work in need certain things for a variety of reasons, due to expectations, cultural reasons, and so on. So when you're researching, you'll look for all of this kind of information and then determine, well, you need to do a little bit of product development. Do you need to offer certain services specifically for that market? Can they be put on your current departures and just have, say, different amenities? Or do you actually develop an entire new product for them? How do they book? How do they research? So again, that will start giving you an idea of like how they preferably book and research, because that'll also start giving you an idea of which distribution partners you need to work with. And are there any other opportunities identified in other markets? Now, I'm not talking about geographical markets here. I'm talking more about other verticals. So like health and wellness, for example, or a different age demographic. Are there any other markets there that you could possibly look at that has an opportunity for you? Now, this information, when you're doing your research, there is great information that you can be found by your National Tourism Office. They often have research papers you can access and market snapshots and so on that you can find. There's also great reports and information that you can find on Expedia Media, and they're free. And they have a lot of market snapshots into different regions of the world. Also, Focusrite and Arrival also have some great information about different markets that you could potentially target. So now distribution. Let's look at how distribution works. Now, this is quite a simple distribution system example. Now, what I'll go over here, just remember, if you are doing this in part of a management degree, majoring in tourism, this is an entire subject. So it's quite in depth. So I'll keep it quite simple for now. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of acronyms at the top: ITO, DMC, well, wholesales, OTA, agents, affiliates, GDS, VIX. There's so many different acronyms, and we do love a good acronym. So an ITO is an inbound tour operator. DMC is destination management company. ITOs and DMCs are pretty much the same thing. So they are based in destination, and they do all of the on-ground coordination. Then we have wholesalers who kind of bulk buy product as well, and they often buy via the inbound tour operators, the DMCs, and so on. Then, of course, agents, our travel agents, our OTAs, our online travel agents, affiliates, so different, again, partners that are not traditionally quite often in the tourism industry that also sell. GDS is a global distribution system, and a VIC is a visitor information center. So as we look at this diagram, we can see the traveler. Now, the traveler, when they're thinking about a holiday, you can see the arrows are going back and forth. Usually you're quite open to marketing opportunities if you, depending on what stage you're at in your planning. So you're being bombarded with different marketing from different destinations, products, airlines, etc., to build out a holiday. And they can be coming from everywhere. So you can see that that marketing has a line from pretty much everyone. Sorry, I clicked. And so you've got a line from everyone here. So everyone's having a go at trying to get a bit of that traveler dollar. Now, even your own experience is because you a good direct booking or you'll never say no to that. So let's look at this. If your traveler walks into a travel agent. Now, a travel agent and a wholesaler are traditionally in the source market. So that's basically if you are trying to sell to Japan, for example. So the travel agent wholesaler are located in Japan, whereas the inbound tour operators, a lot of the in-destination experiences and visitor information centers and so on, they are in destination. So they are in your home country. So they walk into the travel agent and you want to book a holiday to wherever they want to go. The retail travel agent, often, depending on who has the best competitive rates, will book through a wholesaler. Then that wholesaler will then book everything through the inbound tour operator, who then books the entire itinerary on the ground in the destination. Now, this is a very traditional type of way that people can purchase. So this particular distribution chain has been around for quite a long time, and it's fairly baked in and a well-oiled machine. So the inbound tour operator or the receptive or the DMC, the reason why the travel agent wants to then book with the wholesaler and then the wholesaler book with the inbound tour operator or the receptive or the DMC is basically they pay one bill at the end. So there's only one lot of international transaction fees that are happening. And quite often a wholesaler as well, they often hedge currency. So they'll buy a lot of currency in the particular markets that they work with. Now, the retail travel agent, as I said, that's a very traditional way. Now they can book via an OTA, via online travel agents. They offer agent rates as well. They've got online ticketing agents where they get commissions with. They can book also with affiliate programs and agent programs with a lot of the experiences OTAs as well. They can even go to the visitor information center directly, or they can even book you direct as well. So they have a lot of options. So quite often they look at the most cost-effective itinerary for, and that has the product that they want for their customer, who is the traveler. So that is a kind of an overview of what distribution can look like. It can be a lot more complex than that. I haven't included the global distribution systems into this diagram, but just to keep it fairly simple on how it works. So this is very simplified pricing on how it actually works. So this is one of the biggest questions I often get is, why am I going to pay 25% net to a trade partner? This is the reason. So you can see if you're working in international and you're working in inbound and you're working with an inbound tour operator or a DMC, they usually ask between 25 to 30% net rates. So what that means is then they keep 10%, they pass on 20% to the wholesaler, and then the wholesaler passes 10% on to the retail travel agent. So that means they all keep basically between 5 to 10% along the chain. So the margins aren't that high, really. So that's where the money is going. Everyone's getting paid for their act in the sale, essentially, and they're part of the sale. Now, to give an example, so as I mentioned, I did work for a wholesaler briefly, and there was a really great example of how these work. And it was with this particular wholesaler. They sold to Flight Centre in Australia. So Flight Centre is the largest travel agent network here. And they were selling a particular experience. And this particular experience was a very famous, very well-known experience. And they actually refused to pay anything more than 18% to any distributor, no matter who they were. So for that particular wholesaler, their normal was around 25%. However, for this particular experience, they only got 18%. Now, when they work with Flight Centre, they had to pass on 15% for them to have that contract with Flight Centre. So they only kept 3%. Now, we sat down one of the sales reps to say, you need to stop selling that product, because also we were also doing cooperative marketing and so on with Flight Centre at the same time. So basically we were losing money on every single booking that had that particular product in it. So you can see how like the margins are actually quite small and quite low, but that's where the money goes. And that's why they're asking for that 25 to 30%, because they have to pass it down the chain. And that's the same thing if you're working with a wholesaler direct. So a really good example of working with a wholesaler direct, if you're wanting to work in the UK market, you would probably contract Trailfinders directly. Trailfinders is one of the largest, probably the largest wholesaler in the UK. And they will be at least a 20%. So you would contract them directly as opposed to going through an inbound tour operator or a DMC. Then, of course, you can work with the retail travel agent directly. Usually you don't contract retail travel agents. You just pay them a commission after the fact, after they've made the booking as well. So where do OTAs sit? OTAs usually ask between 20 to 25. Traditionally, so in Australia, to give you an example, in Australia, this is a very distribution mature market. They have worked with the distribution chain very heavily for the last 50 or so years and are very familiar with it. When the OTAs actually entered, Australia actually said, no, we are not going to pay you 25%. And the whole country said, no, we're only paying 10%. And so that kind of was everybody kind of banded together and did that. However, over the years, that has phased out. It's back up to the 25%, but that's also because a lot of the products that do work with them, they sell via their affiliate programs and their travel agent programs. And so they want the extra reach that they can get. And so now they understand that is also getting passed down the line. Now, the other question I get is, but if I get it direct, then I keep all the money. One thing you have to do if you are going to sell direct is that you have to do your own marketing. So you always have to calculate your cost per acquisition or your CPA, including your marketing expenses, with any direct bookings that come through. So you need to figure out what that CPA is to determine actually how competitive is it against your trade and distribution. And this is one of the things that I want you to remember as well, that when you are working direct marketing, you pay your marketing fee up front. So say you do a campaign and you might put $10,000, $20,000, depending on what your budget is, into certain marketing campaigns for the year. You pay that up front before you've got the booking. When you work with trade and distribution in the form of the net rate, so that 30% or 20%, whatever it is, you're paying the marketing expense and after the fact. So you've now got the booking and it's basically paying that marketing expense later. So just remember it that way. So direct bookings, you're paying marketing expenses up front, whereas distribution and trade, you are paying your marketing expense after the fact. So how do we reach your desired market? First thing we do is we research who the main players are in that market that you're wanting to reach. And it's really good to chat to your National Tourism Office. Most of your National Tourism Offices have satellite offices around the world. So you can talk to any of them. They are there to give you advice and also to see whether your product's a good fit and whether your rate's a good fit, and also which distribution partners are the main players that you need to contract. When you do determine who they are, where do they fit in the distribution chain? This will give you the understanding of what kind of net rate you need to offer. Now, I'm going to give you a little rule that you usually start with. For any inbound or DMC, always start with 25% at least, always the minimum. That 30%, you leave that for your volume inbound or DMC, or the really big companies that have huge volume. So that is only for when they've basically proven that they're going to give you a lot of business. Then you can eventually edge them up to 30, but at first, always start with the 25%. For wholesalers, you can start at 20. Some good volume wholesalers, you can eventually go up to 25, but don't go further than that. And then if you want to do some work with some travel agents that you want to have a net rate and a direct relationship with that's more formal, then you may look between 10 to 15. But as I said, usually it's a travel agent you pay commission as opposed to a net. And I'll cover that in a second. Now, when you look at that distribution partner, what products do they already have? Do they have any of your competitors? Does your product fill a potential gap in their product offering? The great news is most inbound tour operators and DMCs and wholesalers right now are looking for the really beautiful, unique experiences, because that's what the travelers are asking for, especially after the pandemic and since the borders everywhere have opened back up. So if you are a lovely, unique experience, and particularly if you've got sustainability, they want you at the moment. So there's a really good opportunity to get contracted with a lot of these distributors at present. Then you need to find out, how do they contract? Do they do it online or do they do it offline? So online, of course, the OTAs, the online travel agents, predominantly are online. So you easily can just go to their website, you can find the Work With Us, and you can just fill out a form and start loading your product in. Whereas offline, you actually physically have to send them a contract in order for them to sign to work with you as well. And also, what is their contracting time of year? So a lot of the time, most tourism businesses contract running off the tourism rate year, which is 1 April to 31 March. So you will start looking to contract around June, July. So we're in April now. That means that you'd be starting to look at your rates for the next rate year. So you're looking quite far into the future. But you need to start thinking about that now in order to get in for the contracting period that's coming up. And then how do you connect with and how do you meet the right product managers? So how can you meet with them? Do you have a network of people to help intro you to the right people? Is it trade shows and so on? But before we look at any of this, we have to look at our rates. So rates are very important in working with trade and distribution, because you have to build in those distribution fees and also make sure that you're protecting your profit margin as well. So first things first, the difference between a net rate and a commissionable rate. So a net rate is when the commission is already taken out of it. So for example, if your retail rate is $100 and you have contracted at a 25% net, you will contract them $75. So this is usually contracted as a confidential rate and has an official contract with it. And the reason why I always talk about confidential rates is because if you are, say, an attraction or a small attraction and you're working with working with tour operators, a lot of the drivers sometimes work with other companies and they often know the different rates. So you have to really be sure to highlight that this is a confidential rate and not to be discussed with anybody. Now, a commissionable rate. So the commissionable rate is your retail rate, and then you've agreed to pay a specific commission on. So an example, your local travel agent sells your ticket again, and they have a 10% commission. So they pay you the $100, and then you give them that $10 commission after the fact. It's a non-contracted rates, typically paid to travel agents, though some OTAs like to have be set up as a commissionable rate, and also depending on the technology and if you are connected via API, sometimes it has to go through as a commission. And so that's something to also look at your booking system and talk to your booking system when you're starting to contract these OTAs on how they actually send either commissions or net rates through the API. And of course, concierges. The concierges usually around 5%. I wouldn't do more than 5% for them. Unless, again, they become a great business source and you start getting more business and you might edge them up a little bit. So setting rates are best practice. So for your inbound tour operators, receptives, DMCs is 25 to 30%. Your wholesalers and OTAs is 20 to 25, and travel agents is 10 to 15. Now, if again, you are an attraction who works with tour operators who also distribute with inbound into the inbound distribution chain, then you need to give them between 30 to 35, because again, they will receive about that 5 to 10% after they have paid their own nets to their distribution partners. Now, there's a link at the bottom there. It is on my blog on my website. It is the latest post, so you can easily find it. And this basically what we're going to go over now too, it goes into detail. So you can always refer to that. So setting rates in 3 steps. The first thing you need to do is look at what is your break-even point. So what is your total number of customers for the previous year and their revenue, and also what is your total expenses, so operations, sales, marketing, everything for the previous year, including that, you know, if you're paying wages, everything, your entire business's expenses. Now, all we're going to do is go ahead and divide your total expenses by your total customers, and you'll soon figure out a minimum price that you need to charge in order to break even. So, for example, if you've had 1,000 customers last financial year and your expenses were $150,000, so then you just do 150,000 divided by 1,000, which is $150. So you have to charge at least $150 per passenger to break even. So it's fairly simple to figure that out. Now, the second part, do you have enough profit margin to cover your costs and also make a profit? So if you're a tour operator and you're wanting to work in inbound with the break even of $150, now let's have a little play with it. Let's add a $50 markup to be $200 per seat. So let's look at then the highest net rate of potentially being 30%. So what's 200 times 0.7 is $140. So can you see that there's a problem? It's not even covering your break even to operate. So this would see you potentially losing money through trade. So you're not going to offer the $200. So then we look at, do we try 250? With the 250, you get a $25 profit. Now, understanding that trade doesn't account for all of your business because you are going to have a great and diverse sales mix. This rate could work. However, in order to protect your profit margin, I'd probably up it a little bit. So let's take it to $2.99, and then you can see your profit margin there is $59.30 per seat, and that's at the highest net rate. Now, again, this is fairly simple. You would need to calculate it for, what you across all your different trade partners to then see kind of what it would look like. So this is an example of what that would look like. So figuring out your profit margin. So we're going to put in those numbers that we just mentioned to figure out what it would look like. And this is just on an adult rate. So just keep in mind, this doesn't have adult and child, et cetera, in it. So we can see that, say we had 500 direct, 300 come through inbound tour operators, 150 passengers are coming through wholesale, and then wholesale too. So you've got different wholesale rates to make up the 1,000 passengers. So again, you can do this with forecasting. So if you haven't worked in inbound before, you can actually play with the numbers to go, okay, these are my targets of where I want to get to as well. So you can manipulate this as you go along as well. So this figures out what your total revenue would be. Then we just minus your total operating costs. So that shows that your profit margin will be $107,887.50 for that year. And that's based on the current rates from the previous year's passenger numbers. So again, if you increase numbers, decrease numbers, and so on, you can figure out kind of get a good estimation on what your profit margin would look for an adult ticket price. Now, I know this looks really confusing, but we're only going to look at a few different types of numbers. And again, it's a fairly simple format for you. But this is a really good exercise to do, because once you plug in the numbers, you can actually see that we have a minus here. So we've got in the child rate, if you're going to contract it, that it's actually going to lose through the inbound or the DMC. If you're potentially going to lose $900 if you had 85 child bookings come through those inbound operators. And similar through the wholesale, you're going to lose close to $40. And I've just put across over here the yields. So this is basically, the dollar amount that's sitting on top once you've taken out those costs as well. And you can see every single ticket that's going through, you're potentially losing $11 through the inbound tour operator or the DMC, and also $1 for every of the wholesale 2 bookings. So it's really good to kind of set up this kind of spreadsheet to look at, where those potential red flags are as well, because we can see you don't want to lose money. This is the thing to remember, and I want you to remember as well. You do not need to contract the same rate for every ticket type that you have. So for this, I would then say, well, for my inbound business, yes, the adult can get, say, 25% or 30%, depending on what you're agreeing, but any child booking would be 20%. So you can actually have different net rates for different ticket types or price types that you offer as well, in order to protect your profit margin. And you can go into meetings if you do have a trade partner that says, no, we can't do that for whatever reasons. You can take them in this actual spreadsheet. And I have done this before. Take it in and say, I'm losing money on that rate, so I cannot contract that to you. And that's the great thing with numbers and maths. They usually agree to that because no, they don't want you to lose money. So it's a good way to get the rate that you want through. Then we look at contracting. So you've set your rates and you've got distribution built in, and now it's time to contract. Now, if you're working with wholesale, inbound tour operators and so on, and they traditionally do offline, you have to actually send them out a contract. So you'll need a contract that with all of your information in. So you'd have your name, address, phone, email, website, all of that kind of information, billing, sales, finance contacts, and so on. Your bank details, including SWIFT numbers, because you will be getting some international payments at times. So you have all of that information in there. You also include your product details, so a company overview, and then all of your product descriptions. Now, this is a great exercise to go through too, because this is when you can actually make what we call brochure copy. So you can write some beautiful copy options, with 100 words, 50-word options, and you can basically copy and paste them in. So this is a good time to get those beautiful brochure copies written, and you can use those same copy. You just tweak it a little bit for SEO purposes when you're working with your online trade partners as well. Then you list your rates, the validity of the rates, the type, the recommended retail price, so the RRP, your net rate, and any inclusions that rate has as well. Always put the recommended retail price. And why I'm very particular about best practice with the 25 to 30%. So do you remember the example that I showed you, the real life example from that attraction that they didn't have their rates set up by best practice? So one of their larger partners who had a 45% net, they were going to simply put a 30% markup on it because that's industry best practice. And by them putting that 30%, they then were going to potentially undercut every single person in the market, including ourselves. So this is why I'm really strict on getting that industry best practice set up, because this is what the partners are expecting, because this is the markups that they're going to put on in order to keep it equitable across the market as well. Now, in saying that, there will be the occasion when they're looking to drive business or doing marketing options where they may eat into their own net rate a little bit in order to have a better price in market. Unfortunately, you can't really control that because they're going to take away any of the money that they're going to receive. So they're basically paying for that as well. So they're just paying for it in a different way. At the end of the day, you're still going to get the net rate that you've contracted. Then you want to include additional information to help sell. So best to push them to like a share drive or something where you've got high resolution images, your brochure copy, any fact sheets, brochures they can download. You can also include FAMIL information. I am a huge fan of FAMIL, so familiarization. When you have certain trade partners come out and experience your product, it is literally the best way to help them sell, because once they've experienced it, they love it and they talk about it and they want to sell it. And it is really a valuable way to actually get the right people selling your product. Now, remember, it's good to have these fact sheets too, because if you are dealing with a wholesaler or an inbound operator, they can have quite large reservations teams as well. So they need that information to be easily accessible to them. And then your terms and conditions, and you want to include things like how to book or quote, your group booking information and policies, any payments, so for credit and non-credit options, cancellation policies for your groups and FIT, your free independent travelers, any FOC policies, your free of charge policies, a child policy, your rates policy, including your currency and taxes, and any responsibility or indemnity that you want to include in there as well. Now, you will send that out, and don't be surprised if they send it back to you in their own contract, but they've basically taken everything out of your contract and put it in their contract, and they send it to you to check. So there's two schools of thought here, but usually you go through, check all the rates to make sure they're correct. And there's a few things that I need you to check as well before you sign anything. So I want you to remember these things. When you're contracting rates, it is your rate. You have control of the rate. You contract the rate that's best for your business. And all contracts are negotiable. No matter what they say, I don't care if you're Expedia, you can negotiate because it's your product and your rate, okay? So you control it on where you want it to go. Always hold that and remember that, because you need to go in with confidence when you're going in and negotiating. You can change a contract before you agree to them. And always remember, a contract has to be beneficial to both parties. It can't be skewed to one or the other. So again, you can change terms and conditions, you can change rates, you can change anything that you think is going to be potentially a poor outcome for your business. Now, there are two things I always checked in any contract that came across my desk. The first thing, check the jurisdiction of the contract. As a supplier, it is best to push for it to be in your home jurisdiction. The reason too is because, we're working often outdoors, in experiences, sometimes with animals, with a variety of things that can happen that's sometimes out of our control. So make sure that anything is in your home jurisdiction. And the second thing I always checked and went straight to was the indemnity clause. So always check that. What you want to do is you want to get it changed to wording to be mutual indemnity, because quite often they go to put the indemnity that basically they kind of wash their hands of anything that could potentially happen. So always check that, and you're pushing for mutual indemnity. If you're unsure about the wording, it is always a good idea to get a lawyer just to check that bit and get them to reword it for you. You can pay that fee once, and then you've got the right wording and you can keep using it in any other contract that comes across. So always look for those two, jurisdiction and indemnity clause. Now, if you've got a contract and you're feeling like it's not actually meeting all of your requirements, it is okay to say no and walk away from a potential partner if it's not serving you. And you can even do that with partners you currently have. If you don't feel like it is serving you in the best interest of your business and your customers, it's okay to walk away. Now, there are other things with contracting rates that you may hear about. So you need to know how they send their bookings through. Do they call? Do they email? Do they book through an agent portal? Does it come via the API? Now, there are other things that you're going to hear. Some will ask for, I want an allotment. So an allotment is it's contracted that they sell X amount of seats per day. They own those seats. And if they don't sell them, they are released back to you 7 to 14 days, depending on what you agree to, prior to the departure for you to sell them. Look, allotments are good for large tour operators and you've got a lot of availability. Bad for small tour operators with small inventory. If you've got 20-seater bus, for example, do not do allotment. It is not on the table. You will not do allotment. And if they ask for you to do allotment, say we offer live availability through our agent portal. If you're working with a booking system, and you can book through there, or you can check availability there. Now, if you do agree to allotment, how allotment bookings come through, they basically send like an allotment report through every day. It's often emailed through, and it's all the bookings that they've made in the last 24 hours, and you'll need someone manually to enter those bookings in. The second option that you may hear is free sale. So they can basically sell as many tickets or seats as they can on any day. You send them out a free sale report daily with block out dates. So these are the days where you're looking quite full and you can't sell. But they're good for attractions who have general admission tickets, and they can just sell and sell and sell. That's usually a great option for them. However, it's bad for any tour experience with limited availability. Don't use free sale. Then we have live availability. So they can sell directly via the agent portal of your booking system or via the API connection through your channel manager. This is good for attractions, tours, experience. It's good for everyone. This is basically where we're wanting to move as much as we can, is through to a live availability, and it's bad for no one. Now, a really good example of allotment versus live availability. I was working with a trade partner, and they were one of our largest trade partners. And the experience that I was selling only had 15 seats available. So very small, very high end, so high ticket price. So, it's really good nets. People want to sell that. So what happened was I met with that inbound tour operator, and they said, we lost a booking to a smaller distributor because they had live availability and we didn't. So you have to give us allotment. To which my answer was, you need to sort out your connectivity between your booking system and our booking system, because we are never going to give allotment. If you want live availability, the option is there available for you, but that's actually your internal processes and systems that you need to sort out. So to give you an example, that particular customer, they paid a higher price because that tour operator, inbound tour operator we were working with, they had the best price in the market. But that particular traveler, and they paid a higher price, but they wanted the instant booking. So live availability is great for everybody, not just for you, but for your customers as well. And they're happy to pay for it if it means that they're confirmed in for an experience they really want to do. And then the last one is on request. So they must check availability before they book anything, and they send through the booking request through as unconfirmed, and you have to book it in and confirm it back before it's actually confirmed. This is good for really limited experiences or private charter experiences. And I don't recommend for anybody else to do on request, because you could potentially be leaving money on the table. So where to go to connect with the right trade partners? Networking. Get out there, join industry groups, attend everything you can. The tourism industry is very much, people start getting familiar with each other, and it's all about building relationships. So get out and network to everything that you possibly can. Associations, look for any particular, if you're wanting to work internationally, look for an export council or a tour operator association, where they often provide, again, mini trade show and networking opportunities. And the great thing about these associations, when you join them, they often will go through things like your net rates with you and make sure that they're all best practice and they're on par and that you're ready to go as well. Trade shows, find the right shows and attend them. Trade shows are vital in finding the right partners, especially ones where you can actually have pre-scheduled appointments. So the big ones to look out for, like ITB in Berlin every year, IPW in North America, and then in Australia we have the Australian Tourism Exchange. And if there are pre-scheduled appointments, make sure that you book them in. You reach out to the right people. If you're unsure of who to reach out and who to message, again, usually your different association or state or tourism government organizations, there's usually representatives that can help you do that as well. Work with your destination management organizations and national tourism organizations. Find out who your industry rep is. Reach out to them, grab a meeting with them. And I would do this regularly. I'd do this like once a quarter, bare minimum twice a year. They will tell you very quickly what's going on in the markets, what the feedback is around your product, anything that's kind of happening, any campaigns they're going to do, any key distribution partners they may be looking to work with that may be a potential contracting option for you. So find out who that industry rep is and build a great relationship with them, because they are usually a fountain of knowledge. Get online, good old Google, use and get a list of target distributors, put them together. So you've got that list. And when you're doing your research of who they are, where they sit in the distribution chain, and then, use LinkedIn to then find out who are the product managers that you need to reach out to for your area. And if it's get a premium account if you need to do some almost like cold messaging for a period, so you can actually build out that network online if you can. And then there's also Tour Connect. Now, Tour Connect is an online platform, and it is designed specifically for suppliers to trade partners and distribution partners, where you can actually message the right people who are on that ecosystem, and you can actually contract through the system as well. Now, lastly, once you've contracted those trade partners, do not set and forget. This is not how this game works. And remember, it is also a marathon, not a sprint. So it's a long game. So keep them up to date of any changes of your product and give them plenty of notice. Let them know before new products go live. Let them come out and do a familiar, like a little teaser of the particular product, then get their feedback about the product, what they like, what they don't like. And this is a good opportunity. Then you can tweak the product accordingly as well. Take the time to visit them. They often have opportunities to train their teams, so their res teams and product teams, on how to sell your product. Offer familiarization, so for mills, you can do it by giving them FOC seats, so free of charge seats, or you can offer heavily discounted rates for their staff. So there can be, I usually have an option of, like, there's FOC, and then there's for mill rates, which could be, again, very heavily discounted. And then there's industry rates, which was usually 50% off was industry rates. And then a for mill rate may be around 60% off. But the more of them that you get on your product, the best they can sell, the best they, love your product and talk about it and push it through their networks as well. Build genuine relationships with them. Be yourself, be authentic. Try and keep shop talk to a minimum at events. And I'll give you an example of this. So I've got a good friend who I've built through my work in this area, and she was the head of product for the largest inbound tour operator, or DMC, for Australia. And we were in an event and having a wine and having a chat and so on. And I suddenly realized that every event that I was at, we would end up hanging out. And so I asked her, because she's the most sought after person in the tourism industry in the country, basically. And I asked her, I said, why do you always hang out with me at these events? And she said, because at these events, we've done all the business for the day, but this is for me to unwind, and we just have a good time, and we talk and we laugh and we have a good time. And literally, as she said that, I watched another product walk up and be like, oh, I've been meaning to talk to you. I wanted to talk to you about this. And she literally rolled her eyes and then turned around and was like, okay, because, these events can be pretty a hard slog. So they can be, a lot of meetings back to back, a lot of talking and so on. So when they have these little functions at the end of the day, yes, you can do the great business at events. But, as I said, try and keep shop talk to a minimum. Just be your authentic self, because you're there to build relationships. And that particular partner of mine, I had a few things happen with the product that I was working for at the time that, we were having to do some massive cancellations and so on. And every time I rang her, it wasn't oh my goodness, like they're going to yell at me or so on, like, they're going to lose trust in our product. I was able to pick up the phone and talk to her frankly and to say, this is the situation, we're unfortunately going to do this. And it was never a hard conversation. So, this is the thing about working in trade and distribution, is build those genuine relationships, because it'll make your life a lot easier in the long run. We work in tourism, things happen. And so if you do have something happen, you can easily have a frank and honest conversation with them without actually having that dread feeling in your stomach when you're calling them going, oh no, I've got to cancel again, or I've got to amend again. Okay, participate in incentives they run. They often run incentives in their teams to stimulate more bookings. So, make sure you can offer like a FOC seat or something like that. So participate in them as well. Schedule regular calls and meetings with them, keep them up to date with what's happening. They'll help keep you up to date with what's happening in market. They'll give you feedback on your product as well, and continually build that rapport. Make sure you have a booking system that offers net rate and commission rate management. Now, you want that booking system to be preferably via agent. You don't want it via product, because it can get labor intensive if it's via product. So if it's via agent, then you've got all of the different net rates that you can load in. So you can basically go, that's like a 30% net rate for that trade partner with certain exceptions. So again, like that example, but I've with the child rate, but except for the child ticket price, it'll be at 20%. So you can put an exception to the rule. So that means when you're going to contract or loading rates, it's as simple as loading the next season rates, because the system will automatically calculate the net rates for you. That's what you want it to be. You don't want to be loading in net rates every season or so on. Again, as I mentioned, that first example, they had 130 trade partners with multiple ticket prices. So you can imagine rate loading. There's the thousands of rates that you're having to load, and it's open to human error. So you want it to be as automated as possible. So that's a really important thing to look for in your booking system as well. Make sure they've got connections into industry via channel managers and agent portals as well. So you can have those different options for your trade partners to book. And make sure you have your rates loaded before you send the contract out, so you're completely ready to make bookings. Now, when you send your contract out, I will give you a little bit of a tip. If you are working with quite a few trade partners, maybe 30 or 40, there's some CRMs like HubSpot where you can get the free account. You can actually make custom properties where you go, this is the trade partner and they're on a 30%. This is the trade partner and they're on 20%. So when you send out contracting, you don't have to send out individual emails. You can basically just set up a template, attach the 30% contract, and you can send it out like a newsletter almost. But it's great to send it through a CRM too, because you can check if it's been opened, you can check if the contract's been clicked on, and so on, which is really handy if you've changed a rate and down the track, and then there's a discrepancy, then you can go, well, actually you did open, and they say I never received the contract, which again I have had. You can go, well, actually you opened the email on this date and you opened the contract on this day, so you did receive it. So we're going to charge the new contracted rate. So it's a really handy little tool. So that's just a little tip for you as well. And the biggest thing to remember, this is a people industry. It is a really fun industry to work in, and this part in trade and distribution, it's probably one of the most fun areas. So be yourself, have fun, and build great relationships. I can say that some of my nearest and dearest friends are all people who I met through tourism and my time working in distribution and sales. So it's a really fun area to go in. Just make sure you've got your rates ready, your contracts ready. If you need a contract template, I do also have one on my website that you can download. But have all those things in the background ready, and then it's get out there and make great relationships, and then try and sell as much as you can. So are there any questions? Handing it back.
We received a question, and then not even a minute later, your next slide had answered it. So thank you for being so thorough. That is our time, everyone. Thank you, Meredith. I know that diversifying your sales mix can feel really overwhelming, and to have you break it down for us like that, it just took all the work out of it for us. So thank you for that. Thank you everyone for attending. This recording will be in your inbox within the next few days. And we will also make sure to include her website if you want to reach out to her or you have any other questions.
Thank you so much, everyone. All right, thanks, and have a great day.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.